So today I wanted to talk to you guys about some things that always happen to Irish people when we go to America. Now these could be people who are visiting or people who've lived there for a really long time. It doesn't matter, they happen to all Irish people. Before I get into the video, do be sure to subscribe otherwise, and this was a great one suggested by somebody in the comments, all the subscription curses that have gone before will befall you going forward. So subscribe. If you're new to this channel and you don't know what I'm talking about, I suggest you just subscribe or you're in for a lot of minor irritation in your life. That's just a thought. Okay, coming in at number 10, and this might seem like an obvious one, but the thing that Irish people get the most when we go to any other country outside of Ireland is the question, do you know ... In place of ... is the name of a person. It's not just ... So, do you know Michael O'Flaherty? Do you know Bridget O'Neill?
Ugh, yes, don't remind me.
This is because Ireland is such a tiny, tiny place, and a lot of the time, in a sassy way, we would like to respond, no, God, of course not, we don't know them. But the chances are, if you stay there long enough and you go a couple of degrees of separation down the line, you probably do know them. I've said it before on this channel, 6 degrees of separation is not the case in Ireland. It's usually like 3 degrees of separation. So the chances of us knowing the person intimately are quite slim. Not that slim. We probably don't know the person, but we probably know somebody who knows somebody who knows the person. That's just how tiny and intimate our country is. I would say it's like on a scale of 1 to 10 irksomeness, like a 2 on the irksome scale. It's actually quite fun trying to figure out how you know somebody in some way. But yeah, do you know is a very common question that we get asked when we go to other countries. Coming in at number 9, people ask you to say certain words all the time. Potato, 3.
They're always after me, Lucky Charms.
Car, 33. I find it fun with anybody who has any kind of different accent to usually get them to say something, but I don't think anybody gets asked this as much as Irish people get asked to say these specific words. I did a video before on the channel where I just said words that you wanted me to say, and it went pretty well, so I kind of understand how this is a thing when we go abroad. If you're at all familiar with Ireland, you will know that there are so many different accents and dialects here, and that also makes it kind of interesting for people to see how we say words differently from one place to the other, I guess. But yeah, we always get asked to say words. The next thing that Irish people always get asked or is pointed out to us whenever we go somewhere, and say you go to Spain and you're drinking a cocktail, because you know, you're on your hollybops.
Yes, I was on holiday.
Often people will say, I thought you'd be drinking Guinness, or they'll assume you like whiskey. Most of us do. But it's funny how people just assume that the only drinks that you will drink are the drinks native to your home country. My personal favourite drink is a Malibu and Diet Coke. It is very much not Irish. But I don't know about anybody else from Ireland, but I always feel like I'm letting the side down if somebody asks me that question. They're like, why aren't you drinking Guinness? And I'm like, I don't love Guinness.
It's not that we don't believe you, honey.
But yeah, it's just a thing that happens when we go abroad. The next thing, and this is probably a little bit controversial, I've done a lot of lists on this channel where I've answered like awkward questions that people ask, but a thing that happens regularly when I go abroad is I will be asked if in Ireland we have something really basic. Now some would argue it's bred out of ignorance, but I actually like questions like this because until you ask the question, you don't know the answer. So ask away. I've been asked things like, do we have microwaves in Ireland? Do we have fridge freezers in Ireland? Yes. Of course it seems obvious to people who know the answer, but then there are things that we don't have that seem obvious as well. What makes culture interesting is different things and how different things work. So, you know, the idea that we would have different technology than you or different systems than you, I think is a perfectly legitimate question. I mean, there are times that it gets a bit strange, like people will ask, do we have candy in Ireland? I've actually been asked that, yes.
Isn't that like 90% of your diet? I'm not even joking.
But in fairness to the person, they didn't know the answer, and now they do, so I'm okay with it. The next thing that always happens when Irish people go abroad, especially to America, is that we get invited places. And these are really intimate places too. You'll be invited to stay in people's houses. Now, I don't know if that's just a customary thing that American people do, invite you to stay over in their houses, but I've encountered it a lot from strangers. Okay, I see where this may be going in the comments.
Fire up the smut.
And I don't mean like that, I mean like genuine family people have been like, oh, you can stay in our house. we have a room for you if you want it. Also, everybody wants to party with Irish people apparently, so I get invited to parties a lot, and my friends have found this to be the case a lot too. This is just a situational fact. If you are a foreigner and you go abroad, you are suddenly extremely interesting to people, even if you're quite a boring person. It's just, you're interesting because you're different. But I do think the Irish have a certain unique presence in America. Americans are very warm and friendly usually and invite people. They're just open kind of people, I have found. And the Irish tend to be quite charming and get a closeness with people quite quickly because of banter. So when you kind of put those two elements together, you get being invited a lot of places. The next thing that will always happen when an Irish person goes abroad, again, especially to America or Canada too, is you will find yourselves having to explain that Ireland is not part of the UK. It is not in Great Britain. You'll have to explain the Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland divide. Now, this is something that, generally speaking, I don't particularly want to do. I'm not super political and I'm not extremely well informed on all the subject matters, but suddenly I find myself being a spokesperson for the entire situation, and that can be a little awkward.
I'm really uncomfortable.
It's especially awkward when people don't know anything about Ireland not being part of Britain. They don't know about the whole Northern Ireland situation at all. I have found myself arguing with people that we are not part of the UK, and then people going, oh no, but you are really. And I'm like, no, Ireland, the Republic, it's a republic. It's just something that happens whenever we leave the country. We find ourselves having to explain that whole situation. It's just a thing that happens. I'm also asked my thoughts on it a lot, and I find that quite intimate. You know, like your opinion on the situation might be personal to some people. So if you happen to encounter an Irish person, if you live abroad, maybe avoid that subject. It's just not something that necessarily people want to talk about. Some people do. Some people love volunteering that information, and if that's the case, cool beans. The next thing that Irish people always do when we go abroad is we have to alter our English language. Like anywhere else in the world, we have our own sayings and phraseologies and the way we say things. We'll find ourselves having to use our diction a lot more clearly. Like, I find myself talking a little bit more clearly on this channel than I do in just regular everyday life. People say I talk fast here, but I definitely talk faster in real life. The way you guys say things is just the way we will say things when we're abroad. So instead of asking somebody for a tomato when I go to a store, I might ask for a tomato. I have never asked for a tomato or a tomato in any store ever, but it's an example. Here, if I'm walking around the place, I'll find myself using words like grand all the time, but when I'm over there, I won't, because people don't know what I mean if I say grand. It's kind of the case that the onus is on the person visiting the country or moving there to alter their language to make life just a little easier in terms of communication, and that's perfectly normal and okay, in my opinion. But let me know below in comments if you think you prefer us to maybe keep our own phraseologies and stuff when we go over, because then you guys could learn new words, I suppose, and that's always fun. The number 2 thing that always happens when you go abroad as an Irish person is you will be asked to prove your Irishness. I'm regularly asked when I go to America to speak Irish, or do I know the words to the national anthem? The answer is, after a certain point, no. I'm also not very good at speaking Irish, and that makes me feel shame. But also, it's just taught so poorly here, as I've told you before, so shame on the schools. Frequently, people will ask me about a specific Irish band or a television show that I've never heard of, and I will just be like, I don't know the answer to that question. Just because I'm from Ireland, I don't know everything about Ireland or everything Irish ever that has happened in the history of Ireland. I just don't. I think because in American schools, you guys are taught pretty much solely about America. You assume in Ireland we're taught about that too, and we are to an extent, but we're also taught a lot of world history, so that's maybe why we don't know everything that you might know about American history. Also, if it's just not my subject matter, I just don't know about it. I don't know all the bands. And in terms of the anthem, I know up as far as Buin Dar Slew, and then it goes. If you wrote it out for me, I could sing it. And the number 1 thing that Irish people do when they go to America, or in fact, anywhere in the world, is go to Irish pubs. I don't even know how this happens. I never set out to go to another country and go to an Irish pub. Believe me, it is not something that I have in my plan. I don't want to go to another country and immerse myself in Irish culture, but it just happens. I think maybe it's the equivalent of finding a McDonald's as an American. You just see it and then you're like, I have to go in there. Sometimes I just open my eyes and I'm in an Irish pub. I don't know how I got there. That's probably the fault of too much alcohol, though. I feel obliged if I see an Irish pub or bar to go in there, and I know a lot of other Irish people do too.
I was being drawn to you.
This is certainly the case even in Europe. When we go on holidays to Spain or Portugal or France, Irish people go to Irish pubs and Irish bars, and it makes me go, oh God. But we all do it, and if you say you don't, you're a liar. No, maybe you just don't, but most people do. I think maybe we go in there to be like, how Irish is this Irish pub? Is it real Irish or is it touristy Irish? Usually it's pretty Irish because there's loads of Irish people in there. So, and that's it for today's list. Let me know of anything that always happens to you as a person from another country when you go abroad that always happens. Chewy just wants to say thank you to a couple of people now.
Hi everybody, Chewy here. I want to say thank you to all the extremely generous people who are supporting the channel over on PayPal. Michael, Conrad, Kim, Gerald, Sam, Clayton, Dennis, Paul, Gerald, Chad, Curtis and Alec. Thank you so much guys, it is really appreciated.
And that's it for today's list. I will see you guys on Friday. Have a great week and stay safe. Bye. Okay, come in. I might... If you're at all familiar with Ireland, the next one is if I go any... The next thing that Irish people... The way you guys say things is... And that's it for today's list. Let me know of anything that always happens to you as a whatever person from whatever country you're from